Peace. What's going on, YouTube? So today we're gonna get into Nero and Devil May Cry 4 and what he represents spiritually and how you can use that to your benefit. So we've done videos breaking down V and Virgil, and the Dante video is coming up soon. We also broke down all of Devil May Cry 4, but I wanted to focus on Nero primarily simply because of the time that we're in currently. And I feel like this applies. And if you're on the spiritual journey, you have to be able to apply these principles and take them and go research things for yourself so you can use them to transform yourself. And Nero is very important because Nero represents all of us in different ways. So who is Nero? Nero is the son of Virgil, and he's technically the new protagonist of Devil May Cry. And I thought it was interesting that they changed the protagonist from Dante to Nero, because Dante's story wrapped up in Devil May Cry 1 through 3. So now that we have Devil May Cry 4 and 5, Nero is technically the main character. With, you do have V and you do also have Dante, but the story is mainly focused on Nero. You can see they have him on the cover art and everything, and it seems like the story is more so about him. Even Virgil being his father, that was the biggest thing in Devil May Cry 5, other than what Virgil did. So when we look at Nero, his name itself breaks down to 52 or 25 in gematria. And if you reduce those by adding a 5 and a 2, you get 7. And so 7 represents the 7 chakras. And so Nero generally he either wears purple, which you could say represents the crown chakra, but that's also what he syncretizes with too. But ultimately, or when you fuse Dante and Virgil, and you put the red and blue together, you'll get the same color that Sparta was wearing. So Nero's wearing the same colors as Sparta, which is purple or violet. And the word heart also breaks down to 52 or 25 in the same exact ordinal and reduction through gematria. And this is the 4th Devil May Cry game. And so as I said in the Devil May Cry 4 breakdown video, and when you see the number 4, you know that it's dealing with the heart, because the heart chakra is the 4th chakra, or the Anahata chakra is the 4th chakra. So them choosing someone like Nero and that representing with heart as well doesn't really seem like much of a coincidence to me. It seems like vibrationally it's aligned. And we're going to talk more about what this really means, what these numbers all break down to in a second. So the next thing that breaks down to 52 or 25 is also Heru, which is an Egyptian god who's also he's syncretized with Jesus or any Christ figure. Heru is the original Christ figure, and if you put those Christ stories together, you also see that they're very similar. So in the 16 crucified saviors inside of that book, it talks about Heru and how that influenced the Christ, what it became. And you can also syncretize that with Krishna, with Hercules, any other messianic figure Heru syncretized with. So that means Nero and Heru are both the same energy. They're also both, they both contain the same amount of letters, which is 4. So now they're vibrating on the fourth dimension, or the 4th chakra as well. So now you know that Nero, heart, and Heru, you can put them all together, and you know that they all mean the same thing. So this is what gematria does. So when you look at things numerically through numerology or gematria, anything that has the same numerical value has the same vibration. So that's why they have where it says that Jesus or the Messiah and the serpent, they both break down to the same numerical value. So that means they're actually two sides of the same coin vibrationally. They're the same thing. So you want to look at things, this is looking at things esoterically. Exoterically is when you're reading a story and you're just looking at what it says to you on the surface. Esoterically is you're finding the hidden meaning in what you're reading and understanding it from a deeper perspective, what the symbols really mean. That's what esotericism is. That's what the occult really means. You're finding a hidden language through symbols. So symbolically, if we're not using pictures to get our symbols across, then we can use numbers, because numbers are universal. And this is why they're universal, because numbers are symbolic ways of communication. So that's why every language uses the same numbers. There's no extra numbers in a different language. Everybody across the world uses the same numbers. And the final thing I want to do or want to say is that Yeshua breaks down to 79 and 25, and that's also 7. So Yeshua is technically what Jesus' name breaks down to, because Jesus is a Latin name that was given to the Christ figure of what was originally Gnosticism that became Christianity. But that's not if that person existed, his name wasn't Jesus. So it would have been closer to Yeshua. So Yeshua, which is symbolically, you could say it represents the Christ figure of Christianity and Gnosticism, breaks down to 7. So that means Nero and Yeshua are also the same thing. They're the same character. They're the same deity with different stories. Now, when we look at these things and we say, okay, well, obviously, if I break things down numerically or, using numbers as well, and I see that the Christ and the serpent, even though they do two different things, they're completely polar opposites, maybe exoterically, that they mean the same thing. Well, that's going to give me a sort of conflict. Something has to be wrong or something has to be fake. Well, the thing is, the deeper that you get into occult study and spiritual study, you're going to find conflicting information with what you're taught to see as a linear thing. So, and people who are well versed in esotericism, they understand this. But people who may have gone to church and grew up in church and just kind of listen to the way that things are told to them might not be very attuned to this. So you have to understand that there's a whole world of understanding and reading and understanding information that you might not be privy to yet. But that's okay, because you have to grow and you have to study things to really get an understanding for them. Because what's been happening is that many people have been listening just to what somebody tells them instead of getting the information for themselves. This is exactly why the Bible itself wasn't allow people, or the church didn't allow people to read the Bible for centuries, because they feared that if people read it for themselves, that their minds would be free. So, and because you can break things down, you can come to different conclusions versus what someone's telling you. This is exactly why churches, they use a tactic now where they'll take a verse out of context and tell a story and, twist it around to kind of make you feel a certain way. But when you read the entire story, you read everything out of in context, you see that it's telling a whole different story, and it has infinite meanings. So essentially, when you look at things numerically, you want to be able to put these things together. So when I'm looking at Nero and Heru and Yeshua, that means that's 3 different stories, 3 different characters that I can go on Google and study and put all of it together to get a bigger picture and see how it relates to me on an inner level. When I meditate on those symbols and I see how it relates to me on an inner level, then I can truly come to my own understanding based off of what my spirit is telling me through images in my mind's eye, or through dreams, or through different events that happen throughout the day. So that's how you want to take this information and you want to use it for yourself. So as I broke down the Devil May Cry 4 video, Nero means black in Italian. So Nero meaning black, you can also associate him with the black dot or the pineal gland, which is the 6th chakra, the 3rd eye, and indigo, which is a color that Nero does wear. He does wear dark indigo in Devil May Cry 4. And that's the color of the 3rd eye chakra, which is the closest color, the darkest color to, other than red, it's the closest color to black. So that meaning it's not by mistake. And when we look at the 6th chakra, which also, it's located in the pineal gland or the brow chakra, right? It secretes melanin or melatonin and serotonin. Melatonin is released during the nighttime. Serotonin is released during the daytime. And that melanin inside of the pineal gland, when we look at melanin in and of itself, it breaks down to different things. There's a lot of different studies, and this isn't necessarily a video about it, but what we want to look at is what it represents. And so what it represents is a superconductor. And so when we're looking deeper into these symbols, we also want to see what these things all mean. So the darker that we get with these meanings, we have to understand is just talking about different versions of melanin. So neuromelanin also breaks down to 6 in numerology. So when we put neuromelanin and Nero together, you get the same thing, essentially. So now that we know that neuromelanin is syncretized with the 6th chakra and also syncretized with Nero, which you could say neuromelanin, the pineal is the black dot, and Nero also means black. So now we're putting two things together off of understanding what multiple layered things mean. Now, neuromelanin is produced in a substantia nigra, not in the pineal gland, but regular pineal melanin is produced in the pineal gland when it's decalcified. And that's what allows your pineal gland to access different spiritual realms. It's the melanin being produced in there. And the neuromelanin content within you is also what allows you to achieve higher levels of spirituality and kundalini awakening. And so the neuromelanin, as described by Dr. Terrence Owens Moore in his book, is that's what separates people in terms of what type of being they are spiritually. Not necessarily the skin melanin, because Afrocentrists may have you thinking otherwise. So we have to look deeper than that, because a person's spirit can incarnate in any kind of body. So it's not just a skin melanin that's differentiating. Now, I'm not going to say that the original people didn't outnumber in terms of neuromelanated people. But what I am going to say is that looks can be deceiving. So someone can incarnate and still be more neuromelanated, and they could be lighter skinned than the original people, and that's in that sense, that means that those people who may be Afrocentrists or whatever, they have to look past what the person looks like physically. You have to be looking at people's spirituality. And so that's something you can only see if you can see spiritually into other people. You can tell based off of their vibration whether they're accessing higher levels of spirituality or not, but you can't tell based off of someone's skin color. So, and that's exactly what Dr. Terrence Owens Moore talks about in his book. And I think it's called The Science, Secret, and the Myth of Melanin or something. So get that book if you want to learn more about that as well. But essentially, Devil May Cry 4 is more of a Gnostic story. So you have Nero, as he awakens to the truth through the 6th chakra, which allows you to see the truth. He's helping break down a false savior and a false religion in Devil May Cry 4. So being able to see the truth is what your 6th chakra does. And we also want to see that real strength comes from the mind, and so does reality. So this is why Nero became the focus of the series from Devil May Cry 4 onwards. Not only does he represent a Christ figure, but he also represents what we're all trying to get to, what our spirituality truly means. And so what our spirituality truly means, it's a journey, right? And it's a journey. You have to move out of the lower states into a higher state, because when you incarnate, technically in Gnosticism, you are imprisoned in a human body. And Nero, meaning the pineal gland, represents being able to free yourself from that prison. You freeing yourself through the heart, raising up your energy, going through the heart, becoming the Christ, becoming Heru, and then ascending into the higher realms, back to your higher self, back to your soul. And you can only do that through knowledge. So Devil May Cry 4, which 4 is the number of the emperor in tarot, and the etymology of Nero, as I described, Nero is a line of emperors, and Nero was also an emperor as well. And Nero also means strength and rulers. So true strength is in the mind. True strength comes from your spirit. True strength comes from your heart. And this is why Nero's name is vibrationally aligned with these things. And you can see through his story that we decoded Nero to be a heart entity, right? But you can see through his story and the amount of kindness that is shown that from him through to other people through his actions. Even though Nero's technically an orphan, Nero takes care of everyone else around him. And 4 is also just said in Kabbalah, which is the Sephira of love and kindness. So now we're also looking at the Kabbalah as well. and that's also putting all of this together too. So you can see how that's 5 different symbols all relating to the heart chakra. And in the heart chakra, when you balance out your lower chakras in the heart chakra, you move into a higher state of consciousness. This is essentially what we're trying to move to when we talk about 5th dimensional consciousness. It's everyone vibrating on a higher level of spirituality, but you have to travel through the gateway of the heart chakra to reach that higher level of spirituality. And you have to do it first through yourself. So Nero's entire story, Devil May Cry 4, is a heart chakra story. It's mainly about him and Kyrie and him finding the strength within himself to not only just rescue her, but to learn more about himself, push through himself, and really understand the truth of what's really going on. Understanding that it's time for him to be a hero. He can't just be someone that sits in the back all the time, and he has to be the one to take initiative. So the lower chakras represent our attachment to the physical world. Those are the chakras that truly control our physical reality. And when you get into the higher chakras, they start to control your spiritual reality. And so the heart is the median between the two. So your lower chakras are easier to manipulate by forces outside of you that want to control you. And that's why when you balance them and you move into the heart, then you start operating, you control your reality through your higher chakras. So if you don't understand chakras, it's imperative that you do understand them, because it's extremely hard to do true spiritual work without balancing your chakras first. And the reason why is because if you're emotionally wrapped up in not only your past, but because things that have happened in your past, if they're not dealt with, they hide within your chakras, right? But it's not only through your past, but it's also through the things that you go through daily. So you have to understand which part, where are you vibrating, and whether your energy is truly flowing. And so this is why in many books it's important, like before you can start astral traveling. I know in Astral Dynamics, Robert Bruce, he even says like you have to awaken your energy centers first and learn how to freely move that energy first, because that allows you to control your energy body in the astral world. But if your energy body is bogged down by your emotional state, then you're not going to be able to move your energy body, or you're not going to be able to go to places and do the things that you need to do in the astral world and do the spiritual work that you need to do, because your mind and your energy centers, they're either locked, or you're going to be constantly facing a hellhole of your own problems until you solve them. And that's essentially what we're looking at when we talk about balancing the chakras. So you can get any books on chakras to really get a grasp and an understanding of what you need to do, but controlling your energy is imperative. And so as we move forward with Nero, Christ and gematria, if we fully reduce what Christ is, it breaks down to 5. So, and also Kyrie, which is Nero's lover, that breaks down to 5 as well. And so whenever you have these love stories, because most stories cannot function without an element of love, even if it's not between two characters, Nero and Kyrie are essentially Romeo and Juliet. But that union, that masculine and feminine union, is essentially what happens in the heart chakra. It also happens in the pineal gland too, but it's represented through the heart too, because it also represents, the union between the higher and the lower self. The union between the masculine and feminine happens in the heart, and that's why you connect the negative polarity of the lower chakra and the higher polarity or the positive polarity of the higher chakras. Men are positively charged, women are negatively charged, and that's why men and women, when they say it's a union of opposites, it's because of that. Magnetically, and you can even see in different books, if you get Montauk Chia's book in the Cultivating Sexual Energy for Men, or Cultivating Sexual Energy, Male Sexual Energy, I think, you can see the different parts of the body that are positively and negatively charged. So a woman's body is completely negative charged, but different parts of her body could be positively charged. And it's described through, different sex positions in that book, why certain sex positions work, simply because, it'll be positive on one end and negative on the other end. So essentially, that's what we're talking about. So the union of the masculine and feminine energy in the heart is what these two represent. And that's why Devil May Cry 4 is still their love story. And so the heart is a gateway to the higher realms and chakras too. So Christ representing 5, that's the 5 different elements. So you have earth, air, wind, fire, and ether. Ether meaning darkness or space. And through the darkness and the union of all those elements, you get the true light. So those 5 elements puts all these things together. So Kyrie is those elements, which means she's also Kundalini energy. And her being his lover, he needs her in order for that Kundalini energy to reach the pineal gland for true enlightenment. So these two, I assume in Devil May Cry 6, Kyrie is going to play a different role, either in Devil May Cry 6 or Devil May Cry 7, if they continue making games, which I'm pretty sure they will, because Devil May Cry does make a lot of money for Capcom. But we have to understand that with the number 5, we're looking at the Christ. And like I said, Nero and Yeshua and Heru, all are Christ deities, Christ entities, Christ spirits. And the 5-pointed star pointing up, which is the Christ Pentateuch, is also another symbol that we can add into this too. And you can also say that Baphomet with the 5-pointed star pointing down, the inverse is drawing the power inwards. So there's a book called The Magician, and in The Magician, one of the rituals to guard yourself is you draw pentagrams with your mind. So you imagine them, you visualize pentagrams. So if you visualize the pentagram, but you draw it from the right, like you start clockwise and you draw clockwise, then you are releasing or putting a barrier of energy away from you. But if you draw it to the left, you're drawing energy inwards towards you, or you're kind of loosening your barrier a little bit. So one's releasing, one's giving, and one's taking, essentially. So, and that's essentially what Baphomet and the Christ Pentateuch will represent. They're 2 sides of the same coin. So now what we're going in deeper into is essentially that Nero is also born out of wedlock. So there's many different symbols and Christ figures that have different familial issues, and we talked about this in a different video. I'm pretty sure it was about the family roots for the Devil May Cry characters. You have Horus, whose father Osiris was slain by his uncle. Jesus was a virgin birth, so he was only born to a mother, and then over time, he went on his own journey for a while. Eventually end up saving his own mother. And then you have Ganesha too, whose own father didn't recognize him, so he cut off his head, and then his wife replaced his head with an elephant's head. Or he had to go find a head to put on him. His head was replaced with an elephant's head. And Ganesha is also a Christ figure as well. But initially he grew up without his father present, so Shiva wasn't around. I think he was in the story, depends on which part of Hinduism you're reading, but Shiva was doing whatever Shiva was doing, and Ganesha was watching over his mother the entire time. So essentially, these are the things that are symbolically what Nero represents in Devil May Cry. And when you take this and you relate it to yourself, and let's say, in like an easy way to do this, like I'll give you a simple ritual, right? An easy way to do this is to see yourself as Nero, or any of the deities that we talked about. An easy way to do this is to see yourself as Nero or as any of the deities, and just, and this is in your meditation, right? And also throughout the day if you can, but in your meditation, you want to see yourself as these deities, and through seeing yourself as these deities, you want to just draw in that energy and just see where your spirit takes you, whether through your dreams or whether it's through something else. But see where it takes you, see where it leads you, and get your own answers. Because it's one thing to understand it by seeing a bunch of things that kind of all align, and it's another thing to understand your answers for yourself. When I did heart chakra answers, or when I got heart chakra answers for myself, I started to really understand more of who I was and what I needed to do as a part of my life and my spiritual journey. And it also helped me release a lot of things I was holding on to. You know, heart is a symbol of air. It's the number of air, and it's also the element associated with the heart chakra is air. So that's essentially why it's not necessarily tied to the lower chakras, and it's a bridge to the higher chakras. It's a bridge to two different things, because air is essentially, you know, that's when you're beyond your physical body. You know, that's what allows you to take flight, and you can take flight with a lighter heart. And so that's essentially what happened for me. You know, the more that I worked on my heart, and I still do work on my heart, because spiritual work only ends when you truly get out of this matrix. But even now when I work on it, I understand different things about myself, and I understand things I need to let go of, and I understand things that I need to actually let into my life. And I came to a different understanding of love. You know, I came to a different understanding of love for myself as well. So it allows you to see things from a higher perspective. Love vibrates on a frequency of 400, if I'm not mistaken, or 400 or 500 is the vibration of unconditional love, according to the book Letting Go by David Hawkins. So that's why when you see that the 528 hertz, whenever you can use the 528 hertz to balance out your heart as well, and see what that does for you. You know, I play that for myself a lot. And especially, you know, if I need to fill certain areas with love in my home, I use that as ways to do it too. So there's a million different ways to take these symbols and use it for yourself. You know, when I use Nero symbol, or when I used, what other symbol did I use out of this? Or when I saw myself as Horus as well, it also allowed me to learn different things and tap in as well. And so I'm gonna make a different video about that too, but I kind of just want to talk about Nero and just kind of give you examples of things to use. So when I do make a video about, you know, spiritual work using different deities or different game characters or anime characters, you're gonna see exactly different examples of the stories that I've had through my own experience, and kind of start to get the idea of what you should be doing for yourself. So I hope that gave you something to work with and things to think about. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Just share this around so we can grow this channel. Wish you all luck in your journey, and peace.